Welcome to Active Energy, a podcast featuring conversations shaping the future of energy. Every episode will feature a conversation between energy professionals on topics and questions that are at the forefront of the global energy market. For manufacturers, maintaining flexibility in the face of constant change is the new business as usual. In this podcast, Dennis Edwards, Director of Facilities from our own Schneider Electric manufacturing team, shares his best practices for managing operations for a portfolio of manufacturing sites during these volatile times.
Welcome, everyone. This is Ron Taglieri. I'm the offer manager for efficiency services here at Schneider Electric. And we're going to be talking today about planning for disruption, which is really looking for opportunities in volatile times. And the key thing around this is that operating right now in times of uncertainty is becoming increasingly the new business as usual. So there's a broad reason of external factors that an energy manager really needs to be thinking of, including market pricing, local, regional influences, as well as we've seen the economic dislocations that we've seen in the past month or so. So really what we're going to be talking about today is how to better manage our operations and the energy that surrounds those operations as we move forward. Happily, today I'm joined actually by Dennis Edwards, who is the global or the Director of Facilities for Global Supply Chain in North America. Welcome, Dennis.
Good afternoon, Ron.
Dennis, before we get going, if you wouldn't mind maybe giving a brief introduction of your role today and some of those responsibilities, and then we'll dive into some of the topic at hand.
Sure. I'm the Director of Facilities Management for Schneider Electric's North America facilities, and I'm also the Energy Action Lead for North America. So as I'm managing the facilities, I'm also driving efficiencies in energy across all of our sites.
Yeah, and as we think about this topic, and obviously we have a lot to talk about around current actions and activities, maybe if you wouldn't mind just giving a brief overview of the facilities that's under your perimeter, as well as a little bit of what currently you're seeing happening across the portfolio that you manage.
The portfolio is primarily made up of 65 or so of the larger sites where we manufacture the products for Schneider Electric. And in those sites, of course, it's very important that they're able to produce product 24/7, 365, whenever they need to. And there are also a number of office buildings in there that we treat the same way, because it's just as important to be able to service our customers from those offices as it is to make our products.
Yeah, and as you think going into obviously a reactive situation when events start happening, take us back maybe a step, and if you could speak a little bit more towards the way that you would say what I'm going to call pre-plan to make sure that you are in a position to take advantage of any sort of disruptions that take place, both in terms of the data that you acquire, any systems and processes that you employ, and then we can kind of move towards how we address when a volatile situation actually emerges.
Okay, yeah, for us, there's two primary ways that we plan for unexpected things that might happen in the future. And the first is in our plants, we have redundant systems in place so that if, for instance, the compressed air machine goes down, we have another machine that we can start up and there's no loss of production. We do that with other systems as well, like HVAC and chilled water. We also are always monitoring through the Schneider Electric PME system our energy consumption, which allows us to understand how the systems are running inside the buildings and at what level of production we're functioning at. Okay,
perfect. So obviously, within the last 4 to 6 weeks, we've had a fairly what I'm going to call game-changing event in terms of what business looks like and how that's affected economic conditions, not only within Schneider but obviously globally. So, if you take me through a little bit when you started seeing some of the early signs of things were changing and being somewhat what I'm going to call volatile in our own perimeter, take me through what you do from a planning standpoint standpoint, how you're working with facilities, and how you're trying to get everybody to, in other words, take a larger view of this so that they're able to really proactively work in anticipation of that event.
Okay, and with the recent event, we actually engaged the crisis management team across North America, which is a group made up of safety, real estate facilities, operations people that work to put in specific details for everyone to follow to align with any government requirements or mandates and any safety protocols that we want to get in place. That was the primary thing that I've seen over the last few weeks. We've had that crisis management plan in place. We've been working that, meeting constantly with the sites and with the team to make sure everyone's aligned and going on down the same path.
Yeah, and as you talk about, a portfolio of 65 sites, and obviously they're scattered throughout different geographies, and they're making different products, so that everything's not maybe necessarily linear in terms of going up or down. How do you take the consistency of the program itself and then provide enough flexibility for the individual site managers to properly deploy against their go-forward plan?
So what we've seen across that portfolio is some sites' activity level has actually moved up. Other sites, especially the office buildings, we're working diligently to allow everyone to work from home. So that's created some real variations in activity levels at the sites. And some of the sites where we have a lot of office personnel, we've consolidate people to one floor if it's a multi-floor building, or we've actually shut those buildings down. And it just depends on how that particular facility fits into the overall delivery of the company across North America.
Yeah, and I think I heard you say you're managing not only obviously for just efficiency, but health and safety is a critical component, not only across operating sites, but also office portfolio. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. Safety is our number one priority, health and safety for our employees. So now take me through maybe just from years of experience and stuff of your journey to get where you are. What are some of the key lessons maybe if you're thinking about either having to ramp up something in a very short time frame and or taking things down in a short frame? Any just common processes that might be not industry specific, but that really can be best practices for everybody so situated? Well, yeah, I think most people on the manufacturing understand that ramping up can be difficult because of supply chain issues, and you definitely have to keep those in mind and be sure that you're able to, your suppliers are able to ramp up at the same pace that you're ramping up. And then, of course, slowing down has the same kind of implications. You have to work with everyone involved to make that as coordinated a process as possible.
Yeah, and obviously you gave us some examples of the what's before, as far as equipment types and stuff like that. But from a planning perspective around who is talking to each other, you mentioned this committee internally. How does that work when we're talking to external vendors, whether they're utilities, machinery suppliers, distributors? Take me a little bit through that journey.
Yeah, that's a little bit different kind of communication, but it all has to work in concert. So we want everyone in Schneider Electric to be following that same cadence and getting that same message and going down the same path. But at the same time, we want to be sure we're communicating with our suppliers and our partners so that they understand where we're going and what the impact's going to be for them, and also communicating with our energy providers and facility supporters as well as we go through the process to make sure there's not any surprises to anybody and they can anticipate and help us get things done expediently when we need it.
Okay. Now, you mentioned earlier, you said you were you had the benefit of some sites being actually maxed out a little bit more on their output, and so you were very busy there. But for the ones in particularly maybe buildings, office buildings, things of that nature, where there is going to be kind of diminished activity, is there anything that can be done opportunistically while actually the facilities are closed or in reduced hours, assuming obviously that all safety conditions are met? Have you ever used a down period of time at a facility to implement anything, and what did that look like, if so?
Yes, we have done that numerous times in the past, and what we do is we try to plan for that by having a 5-year plan for things that big projects like that need to be done inside a window where the plant is shut down. So sometimes this can be a really good opportunity for projects like that if you have those projects ready and can implement them during a time of crisis.
Yeah, and you said if you have them ready. So that again presumes some sort of pre-planning. So is there, in other words, a roadmap of things that you are looking to do that you put on a farther down the list, maybe priority, but when opportunities like this exist, then they move up in the rotation?
Yes, of course. We have in that 5-year plan, we have all those projects listed that we want to do with priorities established for the projects, and so that allows us to have those ones that are most critical to us ready to go in case there is an opportunity where we'll have a shutdown either for a short period of time or a longer period depending on the project itself.
Good. So you mentioned earlier when we first began the discussion around data being a critical driver of how you make these decisions. You mentioned leveraging some systems now. As you go through the process of seeing how your performance is actually playing out, is that looked at just on a one-time basis, or are you continuously looking at this as the conditions like these unfold?
Well, we're constantly looking at our systems. Like, for instance, on the energy side, we have metering in place at all of our facilities that gives us a really good view on a real-time basis to what's happening at the location and how things are functioning. And that data set provides a view for us to how we're running compared to what we've seen historically and what changes are taking place in the building.
And maybe my last question, Dennis, directed to you would be, just from being an experienced veteran of managing a portfolio, if you were advising someone who was in this role, coming into a role like this, and they were very new to the business and to their own role, what kind of words of experience would you give them on what they should be thinking of when they first arrive in maybe a non-crisis situation, and then as we evolve into a more volatile moment when things are happening, what are some of the things that they might take away as the first things that they need to do?
The way I would look at it is, if you come into this role new, you need to look at each one of the buildings that you're managing and kind of do an assessment on each one of them. Because when you get to the place where you're in a crisis mode, you're going to be pushed for time. So do all this up front, and that way you'll be giving yourself some time to plan. What you want to do is conduct a risk assessment at each of the facilities, look at the critical equipment, understand what's imperative to be operational there, and identify and prioritize what projects you might need to do in the event that you have a shutdown or any opportunity. You want to also be sure you re-educate the workforce about safety, how things are going to be unplugged, how to avoid any hazards that might be associated with any of the things that need to be done, the projects you're working on. If you can put together that plan for each one of your locations, then when you get to a time of crisis, you're not going to be pressed to try to figure out what you need to do during that period. You're already going to have those things teed up and ready to go.
And so, Dennis, thank you very much. I just want to leave our audience with just a couple last thoughts. And per Dennis's guidance, I think the key thing that we want to first focus on is preparation. So how do you prepare? There's a couple ways. First of all, as Dennis mentioned, it's not just a theoretical exercise. It's very data driven. It's very coordinated with the actual sites, all the way down to the asset level. And then plans are put in place. So in the eventual eventuality that either operations are going to be increased or decreased, there's a intentional way of how to go, not only at the site level, but across the entire portfolio. The second thing I don't want to lose sight of for everyone is the importance of coordination. This is not done in a vacuum. It is done with not only the site managers, the energy managers, but as Dennis mentioned, it involves your facilities, your real estate. And last but not least, especially in a time like this, we have to be thinking about the safety of the employees that are there, as well as ultimately the customers and the supply chain that could be interacting there as well. So with that, thank you very much, Dennis. And we look forward to seeing you back. Actually, we'll have another in a series of these that's focused very much on what we're doing more granular at the site level later on as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you for listening to Active Energy. We're thankful that you decided to spend some time with us. If you could leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, wherever you listen, it would be a great help to us. Please also follow us on Twitter. It's at Schneider ESS, or on LinkedIn and Facebook by searching Schneider ESS. We have also started a LinkedIn group specifically for listeners of the podcast. It's a great place to interact with peers and continue the conversation from the podcast online. Be sure to look for the Active Energy Podcast LinkedIn group and join today. We'll be back in just a little bit with another episode. Until next time.